Could Tyreek Hill still be traded away from the Miami Dolphins? An NFL executive predicted a shocking Tyreek Hill trade. Plus, Tyreek actually spoke out about his initial trade request just a couple days ago, and we'll talk everything on today's episode. We're going to start with the Tyreek Hill trade rumors on if he could potentially be traded because, like I said, an NFC personnel executive predicted that the Dolphins would actually trade Tyreek Hill, and the landing spot that he had was the New England Patriots. And I'll tell you this right away. There is absolutely not a chance in the world to where Tyreek Hill would be traded and be dealt to the New England Patriots. Is there a chance he does get traded? Sure, I'm not saying that's out of the realm of possibilities, but inside the division to the Patriots, yeah, there's no chance. And before we talk about what that executive had to say and what a Hill trade could look like, do you still want to trade Tyreek Hill? Because I know a lot of people, including myself, did want to trade Tyreek after his initial request following Week 18 against the Jets. Have you cooled down a little bit? Let me know. Be honest. Do you still want to trade Tyreek Hill? Well, let's get to what the NFC personnel man said on a Tyreek Hill trade. He said that the Patriots are desperate. They need a guy, that alpha, that can be friendly for Drake May. And there's a higher chance of the draft picks Miami would receive in a trade being higher than with a contender. And although he is not wrong about if the Dolphins made a trade with the Patriots on Tyreek Hill, Miami's return would be much higher from New England. One, because it's inside the division, so there's a tax there. But two, you're sending Tyreek to a team that isn't really projected to contend in 2025, so you'd get better draft picks in return for Tyreek Hill. And I just simply, though, believe that the Patriots would not be able to acquire Tyreek Hill from Miami because the Dolphins would not trade him inside the division. That is number one. Number two, I don't think they're going to trade him at all in this offseason. Originally, I thought he was going to be dealt. But listen, folks, not often does this happen, but I do have a little bit to report here. I've got a little bit of sourced information, and I have never claimed to have sources that much inside the Dolphin organization or with players, but I do have inside sourced information here from a source close to Tyreek Hill that told me that Hill does not want to leave Miami. He cited how he hates to play in cold weather environments, doesn't want to play in that type of thing. His house burned down a year ago. They finally got it renovated in Miami. His whole family's here. All of his kids are in Miami. Tyreek Hill has a good relationship with Chris Grier in this front office. The organization loves Tyreek Hill. So a source close to me told me that Tyreek Hill does not actually want to be traded away from the Miami Dolphins. So I do not think a Hill trade will actually end up happening. But that's why you subscribe to the channel because, listen, we're a jack of all trades here at Dolphins Today. We got sources. We're talking rumors. We got news as well. Subscribe for Miami Dolphins content on the daily when it comes to the draft, free agency trade, and the whole 9 yards. Join us here at Dolphins Today. It sounds like he certainly got caught up in the moment. And how can you blame him, right? Like, Tyreek Hill was obviously frustrated that the Dolphins were not going to make the postseason. He was not happy with not being able to eclipse 1,000 yards in last season because he's done it for so many consistent years in a row. Now, does it excuse what he said after the game against the New York Jets? Absolutely not. Does it excuse him from kind of pulling himself out of the final 18, 19 minutes of the Dolphins season against the Jets in the second half? Absolutely not. But you have to understand that he's a competitor. He wants to win, and he got frustrated with the lack of production this season, as well as the Dolphins not being able to make the postseason. I understand that he got caught up in the moment. I would prefer him not to make a potential trade request, but then once things cooled down and he thought things over, it seems very obvious by what was told to me and some comments he made to the media publicly that we'll share on the second half of this video that he ultimately wants to stay with the Miami Dolphins. And we do got to tell you about our sponsor on today's show, and that is Prize Picks, the daily fantasy sports platform that I trust and you need to get started with today because the big game is almost here. It's now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks is also giving away a free pick for the big game where one of the starting quarterbacks will only need to throw 1 yard to win. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. Prize Picks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. And before the big game in late February, or early February, I should say, there is 2 big games today. Less than Jalen Hurts rushing yards, more than Jaden Daniels passing yards, and more than James Cook rushing yards is what I'm putting in. I was dumb and put in my entry earlier in the week because I could not get it in fast enough. But right now on Prize Picks, you could actually get more than a half a yard for Jaden Daniels passing. Take advantage of that free square from Prize Picks. Get started today. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. I kind of teased it before we told you about Prize Picks, but Hill did kind of walk back his comments regarding his trade request or what he said after the Jets beat the Dolphins in NFL Week 18. Tyreek Hill was on his Twitch stream playing games, and obviously he got to rambling about the season and himself. The chat got to him a little bit, as it always does. And Tyreek Hill said that what y'all had heard at the end of the season was frustration. Bruh, I've been winning my whole life, bruh. I don't understand, bruh. It's a little bit of interesting language there. He also went on to say more, but it included a lot of swear words, so we won't talk about that. But either way, like I mentioned, it was pure frustration from Tyreek Hill. He did not have his quarterback for 6 games this season. We know Tua Tagovailoa only played 11 games this season. It kind of was the reason Tyreek had a massive dip in production because with Tua in the fold the first 2 seasons with Hill, he was absolutely dominant and is a top receiver in all football, putting up over 1,700 yards in back-to-back seasons. And he didn't eclipse 1,000 yards in 2024. Now, some of that was because of the kind of switch up in how defenses played Miami's offense this year. Some of it was because of Tua Tagovailoa not being there. But Hill was dealing with injury all year long, the wrist injury that was bothering him. He had some drop issues this season as well. I still think Tyreek Hill is a top 10 wide receiver in football without a question, but it is just something to monitor that it feels like that was just frustration. He ultimately wants to stay with the Miami Dolphins, and although he has a pretty big cap hit, you ideally want Hill to still be in Miami. The way this offense is ran, the way it's schemed up from Mike McDaniel, it needs to have Hill on the perimeter being a threat with his speed and deep down the field to open up Jalen Waddle, open up Jonnu Smith, Devon Achane on those short and intermediate passes over the middle of the field. You wonder if a scheme change could happen this offseason for Miami after the offense dipped so much. Maybe they're just hoping Tua is going to be back for a full 17 games and their offense gets back on track with a better run game as well. But either way, you hope Tyreek Hill is ultimately going to stay in Miami and be happy for this upcoming season and the remainder of his contract. Do you have a kind heart? Do you forgive Tyreek Hill? Let me know your honest thoughts down in the comment section. Do you forgive him? Type F for forgive, type D for don't. I know a lot of us were very harsh on Tyreek after his comments following Week 18. I'll say this before we talk about the Tyreek Hill contract details. Tyreek likes to win. It's very obvious. Ever since he's come into the league, all he's done is won. He won a Super Bowl with Kansas City. He was in the postseason every single year of his career with the Chiefs. In the first 2 seasons with the Miami Dolphins, he was in the postseason. This is the first year he hasn't made the playoffs. That obviously does not sit kindly with him. He's a winner. He wants to win. So my question is, although he wants to be in Miami, although he wants to be playing with Tua in this organization, if the Dolphins get out of the gates slow in 2025 and say they're 3-5, they're 4-4, they're 2-6 through the first 8 weeks of the season, and we get to that late October NFL trade deadline in 2025, will he request a trade officially this time? I think that's a very high possibility. So that is something I'm looking out for. And I did want to flash the Hill contract details again because it doesn't seem like he's going to be traded for 2025, but it does impact a potential trade in the future on if Hill is going to be dealt away from Miami before the deadline in this upcoming next season, because he's under contract through 2026 and he has a $51.8 million cap hit for the 2026 season. Now, I do expect in some capacity a Tyreek Hill contract restructure to either give him more money this year, which probably isn't the best idea with the cap space not already. Well, the fact is this. You can't have Tyreek Hill playing on a $51.8 million cap hit in 2026. So you're either probably going to move off of him before that or restructure his contract to alleviate some of that cap hit, because that just simply cannot happen. But regardless of the cap situation, you were just going to hope it doesn't come to a Tyreek Hill trade request, because as long as Tyreek Hill stays happy, that means you're winning. That means he's putting up good numbers, and that's all that we can hope. The numbers aspect of Tyreek Hill really isn't the most important thing. It's more of that first thing I said about the Dolphins winning. So hopefully when we're talking about the Dolphins at the end of October before the trade deadline, they're 5-3, they're 6-2, and they aren't looking about potentially selling at the deadline, but maybe they're buying to try to add to this roster to make a postseason push. This is a very important season in 2025 for Miami. We've talked about it a lot. It might be the last opportunity for Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier to be the head coach GM combo of this organization. Heck, it might be the last chance for Tua Tagovailoa to continue to be the QB1 of the future, because if he doesn't produce wins, he gets hurt again in 2025, it is very obvious that this front office is going to have to prepare a contingency to move on and start making those preparations. Or if a new front office comes into play, a new GM, new head coach, they are probably going to look to move on from Tua in the next 1 to 2 years once his contract isn't as not movable. It's an important year for the Dolphins in 2025. Very, very important. So make sure you are subscribed, because the important 2025 season all begins in March, April, when the Dolphins have to replace some of these free agents and add to this roster to improve from their 8-9 record in 2024. Hit that sub button, because we'll have you covered throughout free agency, the draft, and more. Join us here at Dolphins Today.